Hello, welcome to my channel, and today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to use console log in JavaScript. This is going to be part of a series where I go through different aspects of learning JavaScript in each video. This is just to start with because this is a common thing you use in all your code. I'm not going to list every single thing you can do with this because that would take ages, but I'm just going to list the basic things that you'll probably use on a commonplace basis. At the start of each video I'm going to be just outlining what I use to try my code and also what I use to learn it in the first place. So first of all, I'm using Solo Learn to test my code and to run it and everything because it's online based, so you can access it from any device. So I'm just on my profile here that you have to make, but then you have codes that you can make public and other people can comment and upvote or downvote. And to make a new code, you just click new code, and then you have HTML, CSS and JavaScript because JavaScript is a website building language. So then you just switch over to the JavaScript tab, but you don't need to use HTML and CSS unless you're trying to use it in connection to your website. Next here I have Code Academy, which is what I used to learn JavaScript in the first place, and I'll be going through what I learnt from this in a video just because I find videos easier to understand myself, so I would like to make them just so it's easy for other people. So you have different courses on this, and you've got pro ones that you can pay for, or you can get them for free, which is what I did, and I just did a free JavaScript tutorial. Anyway, so I'm starting off here on my JS tab, and it has nothing here right now, but I'm just going to go through what you can do. So you can save your code, save as, reset, which will reset it to the way you opened it. This is just for if you're using this particular program, which I do recommend. Well, it's not a program because you don't have to download it, it's an online application. But anyway, then you have the run button, which is what you'll be using. So first we're going to start off with how you declare a console log. So you type in console, then you do a full stop log, and then you always have these brackets here. And also a good thing to remember is with anything, not just console log, when you're ending a line of code, you put a semicolon or semicolon, whatever you call it. This just indicates that you've finished that line of code. So whatever we want to log to the console is over here. We put in these brackets, whatever that might be. And you always have to remember, because you might use other things that have sets of brackets with it, you always have to remember that you close off this. And one way of doing it with this program and a lot of other programs is you click in front of the bracket, and then you can see that this bracket has been highlighted because they're connected. So this is a good way to just check that you have closed off all of your brackets. So first we're going to start with integers, which just means a number. So I've typed 17 and we're going to run it, and it's going to print 17 to the console. So integer is a whole number, but then we also have floating point numbers, which just means a decimal number. So this is a floating point number, you can print them all the same. Now we're going to use a string, and a string can be declared either with quotes, like that, which is above the to key, or with apostrophes, which is below the at key. The apostrophe key is kind of easier to use because you don't have to use shift to select it, but also people sometimes prefer not to use it because when you're doing a string, which will consist of words most of the time, if you want to do a shortened word like don't, you need to use an apostrophe, and obviously it will count that as closing off the string. You can counteract this by putting a backspace before it, but some people just find it easier to use quotes to start with and erase that problem arising. So now we have don't there, so this is the string we have here, and when we console log it will log the string. Strings can have numbers in it, but it's mostly used for words. So now you can see it's logged don't to the console when we run it. Now you can see I've left a space above the console log, and this is because I'm going to show you that you can console log variables and how to do that. The next video I do will be on variables, which will explain it a lot more, but for now I'm just going to let you know there's three types of variable: var, let, and const. So basically all you need to know for now is that var and let can be reassigned. So you can assign a variable a value and then reassign it later in the code, but if you use const you cannot reassign it. So for now I'm just going to stick with using var, And we're first going to declare a variable, which obviously I'll go into more on the other video, but for now I'm just going to do it so I can show you how to log it. So first we declare that it's a variable with var, let or const, and then we're going to name the variable, so this will be the identifier for it, how we'll call the variable. I'm going to just call this name for now, and I'm going to set it equal to, so this is what you do, space, equal space. And then after that, you can put whatever you want the name to be equal to, or what you want the value of this variable to be. So as its name, I'm going to do it as a string, and I'm going to put it as my dog's name. And then you close off the line again. And so now this variable I've just made has the value set to Junior, the string. You can have it set to integers, floating points. You can even have variables set to functions, which I'll go into in later videos. But a variable is just a way of quickly identifying a block of code, a string, an integer, like I said, just anything you need to identify. So now we've identified a variable, we're going to go back to the console log line, and we're going to put in here name, which is the name of our variable. Now when we're calling variables, like we do with numbers, we don't need to use apostrophes or quotes, we just put it as it is, so like that. Now if we print that, it will print Junior to the console. So now I'm going to go through quickly the different signs and how you can use them. So first, you have plus, which will add numbers, obviously. Then you have minus, which will do subtractions. Then for times, you might think you use the letter X, but you don't. You have to use this star that's above the 8 key, and that will just do multiplications. Then we have the slash key, which is below the question mark, and that will do divisions. So we can do sums in here and print it to the console that way. So if I did 5 and then the star, and then 3, you don't have to leave spaces, but I just find it makes it more clean cut. So it's good to get in the habit of using spaces, even when you don't necessarily need to. Remember to close off the line. Now if I run it, it will come up with the answer 15. So you can do any sums you want in the console log. They don't have to be simple ones, they can be complicated ones as well. Now I'm going to show you concatenation, which is when you will add a string to another string or a string to a number. It's just basically when you have more than one input for the console log and you want to join them together. So say here I wanted to add the string your ages and an age. So what you do is you do a space, then plus, so that just signifies that you're adding it like in a sum, but this time we're using strings and any other data type. Then we're going to add 17, so your age is 17, and you've got to remember when you're doing these that you need to account for any punctuation you might have missed out on. So you need to put a space here, because otherwise if you remove this space, you're going to have that it prints right next to each other. It just doesn't look very nice. So you just need to account, same if you're doing strings. See, that fixes it. But then if I wanted to do not given, if I didn't account for that space that was there, it would come out like this, and then it just makes no sense if you're doing sentences. But you can do this with any data type again. Also, I don't know why I didn't before, but I want to go over the data types quickly, or the main ones at least. You have integer or int, and this will just be a whole number like we said before. Floating point, which will be a decimal number. So I've just put examples there. Then we have string, that's a string. Then we have boolean, which is true or false. True and false will be very handy when you're writing code. If you need to do validation checks and things like that, it's just easier than trying to validate the actual input. It's easier to just validate whether the input's there or not in a lot of cases. And also if you're doing if functions, that will be a lot easier too, because then you can just take a condition and run with that, rather than having to specify everything. Now also I'm just going to state that null, 0 and just having a blank space, they all mean the same thing, they mean nothing. So if you need to check whether something's present or not, you can check these. Now I'm going to get onto the functions, which is my least favourite part, but I'm only going to do a few that you might use. Even these you probably, if you do use, won't use a lot, but they're handy to know, I suppose, so I'm going to show you. So this first one I'm going to show you is if you want to find the length of a string or a number. So all you do is type the string or the number, then you always start these functions with a point or a full stop, whatever you call it. Then here we're just going to put length and then close off the line. And now it won't print hello as it would have done before, it will print the length of this string. So if we print it, 5, because hello has 5 digits in it, or 5 letters in it, whatever you want to call it. Another function here, so first of all we start off with the full stop, and this one is to uppercase. You have to be careful when doing functions that you start each word in the function name other than the first word with a capital letter. And if you're not sure whether a word is one word or two words, because you might think uppercase could be one word, all you do is you put the brackets at the end if it has, that it can have an argument. See, if I'd done a C, it would come up as white, so you just need to test what you're doing until it's blue. But this one, what it does is you don't really use the argument a lot, but what this one does, as it says, it changes the string you've inputted. This doesn't work for integers, obviously. It will change it to be capital letters, so instead of printing what that says, now if we run, it will print hello in capital letters. This one I'm going to show you is called a condition check, because you're not running a function on it or an action, you're checking for something. So with this one it's called starts with, the W is capitalized as usual, then you got the brackets after for the argument, and with this one we do use an argument. So with this one, this is what we're going to be checking for. So we're checking that the string we put before starts with whatever we put in these brackets. So here I'm going to check that it starts with J. And you have to remember this is case sensitive also, so I could do J. So if we print it, it will return false. Same as if we put starts with H, will return false again because it starts with a lowercase h. And if we run it this time, it will come back with true because it does. And it doesn't just have to be one letter. Say I put hell, it would also come back with true. On this one, I've put a load of spaces beside the string, because what I'm showing now is how to remove spaces and things. With this one it's quite easy, although it does have an argument you have to remember. This is just trim, because it just trims the string so that it only has what's necessary. So now when we run it, it doesn't print that, it just prints hello, because it's removed the white space or blank space. Now we're going to get into a couple of maths ones, which isn't fun for you or me, but you have to know some of these things because they can be useful. So for this first one, I'm just going to do math. And you have to remember it's not maths, it's math in this coding. Because if you put in maths, it would not work. So we have math here, and now we're going to do random, if I can spell. This one also has an argument, but you don't really need to use it. And what this does is it prints a random number between 0 and 1. And you might think, well, there aren't any numbers between 0 and 1. But what this does, math random, is it will print a decimal number. So if we run it, it will start with 0 and then point, and then the number after that will be random. Now what we can do, if we want a number that's bigger, all we do is we do the times sign and say 50. Now it will print a random number between 0 and 50. It will still be a decimal number. Now if we don't want it to be a decimal number, all we do is before this we're going to add in math again, dot floor, and then brackets, and this will be in the brackets. You need to remember to close it off. See, we have one pair of brackets here, and so you need to keep track. So we have two pairs of brackets, and then this pair we only have one closing pair, so we need to add another one. And what math floor will do, as it says, is it will floor the decimal. So say you had 2.5, you might think it was rounded up to 3 because 5 or over it rounds up, but what math floor does is it just floors the number, so rounds it to the lowest integer, whatever the decimal is. So if we run this, it will only print whole numbers now. This is a lot more useful if you're trying to print a whole number that you can actually use, because otherwise you're going to have to type out all those decimals. Now we're going to take out math floor, or we're just going to take out the floor part, and we're going to replace it with seal. It's a lot less easy to understand than floor, because that one was self-explanatory from the name. But what seal does is it just does the opposite, it rounds it up rather than down. So now for this last one, we're going to use number.isInteger, and this one is a validation check. So first of all, just remember to capitalize the second word as well, so integer. And also on this one, you need to remember to capitalize number. If you don't have this capitalized, it won't work, and you'll be sitting there for ages wondering why it doesn't. So it going green will be an indication that it does work. So this one, it's going to check that the number you've inputted, which is in the argument here, if it's an integer or not. So if we remember, integer is a whole number rather than floating point, which is a decimal. So I've inputted the number 30 and I'm going to run it. It outputs true. This does true or false because it's a check. So now if I put 30.3 and run it again, it would output false because that's a floating point number. Anyway, so you can do a lot with console log because you use it all the time really. But I just wanted to show basic uses of it, getting to grips with how you declare it and things like that. Just to give a little start on how you're going to be using it, but you'll probably get more to grips with it as you just go on and learn to code other things. So my next video is going to be on variables, how to use them, the different kinds, things like that. I'll be using console log again, and probably in all of my videos because it's such a common thing to use. I don't know how many videos exactly I'll do. I'll just do them until I run out of things to ramble about, I suppose. You can comment down below if you're confused about anything or if you have any questions, but otherwise I hope it was some sort of a help to someone and that you enjoyed.